In brightest day, in blackest night, all other podcasts tremble in fright. Losers cower before the power. Oranges lust and blues you can trust. Indigos feel and white ones heal. Yellow scare and green ones dare. That sapphire love and black hands glove will rock your foundation without hesitation. And Mars face evil's might. Respect their power, for they'll make you see the light.
Hey everybody, I'm Mark Marble.
And I'm Dan Kurtzky.
And this is the LanternCast.
Episode 467.
And guess what? It's actually not the episode. If anybody listened to the mini episode on Scream, you will know what I said this episode was probably going to be, which I knew was a mistake because I went against my own pattern, my own internal thinking and thought process, which is never say or tell what the next episode is going to be unless it's already recorded, because inevitably something seems to always come up. So
listen, I came on here like 2 episodes in a row and promised like 4 specific videos that I'm still kind of sort of making. It's always a mistake.
So Chad hasn't been feeling well. So while the original plan was to do the DC versus vampires thing, even though, to be fair, it really was being done as a filler. It wasn't because we were gung ho to do it. It's like, well, we really didn't have anything ready to go that wouldn't have taken even more time to go through or prep for them than reading those 2 issues. But that's what I said this was going to be, and it probably would have been if Chad was feeling okay. But instead, clearly, it's not that. Dan and I, we kind of paved the way for this when we talked about Boba Fett in our last Green Lantern review. And we also had a pretty lengthy pregame conversation about Boba Fett in the future Lanterns episode that never made it onto the air. So appropriately, we're going to be giving our thoughts on the now completed full season, if you can call 7 episodes a full season of anything, of the Book of Boba Fett.
Well, it's funny you should mention a deviating from a planned series of episodes to just sort of go off in a weird direction all of a sudden. I feel like we should, part of me thinks we should just post this episode with that other episode's title and description, but then people turn it on, start listening to it and hey, wait a second, this isn't DC versus vampires. This is an episode of the Mark DeLorean where Mark talks about the Mandalorian. Actually,
that would be pretty clever. Actually, it's and it would be appropriate. I was thinking about this today as we roll into this conversation, that the last episode of the Book of Boba Fett, I figured this is what I thought was going to happen. I honestly didn't think it was going to be as good as episodes 5 or 6, because we were back to dealing with Boba Fett, but I thought it was going to be a good episode. I thought we'd have a lot of big cameos, a lot of super cool stuff, and it was going to end on a high note where the last 3 episodes were really good, to make people kind of forget that the first 3 to 4 episodes were, if they weren't all bad, they were they mostly were a mixed bag. So it reminded me of actually how the final season of the Clone Wars went, where if you actually look at that whole season as a whole, the majority of that was nothing special. But then you get to the final arc dealing with Ahsoka coming back and dealing with Obi-Wan and Anakin again, and her adventures going after Darth Maul at the same time. All the story of Revenge of the Sith is taking place in real time. That was amazing. That final arc was amazing, and it makes people forget completely about all the stuff that happened for the majority of the season. And that's what I thought was going to happen here, but we didn't quite get that, because episode 7 I thought was they had some cool moments in it, but it kind of dragged, and we didn't get any big cameos at all, even though the rumor that the Han Solo stuff was still filmed and cut, which would be a bigger it would be maybe an aberration isn't the right word, but it'd be a bigger travesty if they actually did film that scene. They have a Han and Chewie scene they decided to cut out at the last minute. That's worse than not even doing it.
Well, you mentioned the final season of Clone Wars, and I think that's a good comparison because I feel like that is a better version of what this show tried to be, because it tells basically 3 discrete stories that are each very different from each other, and depending on what you come to the show looking for, you might like I came away from it thinking like, okay, that first chunk about the Bad Batch, that's fine, I guess, but like I don't really care. That's not what I came to this for. The second story arc was like, hey, I've always been curious about how regular people live in the Star Wars universe, and we got to see some of that. So cool. Third one was the thing that I assumed the entire season was going to be. Like, they should have, part of me thinks they should have just made the whole season this 3-episode arc or whatever. But now that there's some distance there, I can at least look back on it and appreciate all 3 pieces as these individual stories that kind of sort of come together to make an overall story, but not really. And it even does the thing that they love to do, which is let's shoehorn in a new thing to spin it off into the Bad Batch later on, which is a very good show, by the way. Watch the Bad Batch. But then you get over to Book of Boba Fett, and all you know going into it is, hey, here's a TV show about Boba Fett, and it gives us like such like it feels like this haphazardly thrown together thing that does not even deliver on the basic premise of being a TV show about Boba Fett.
There's no doubt about that. And the funny thing was, and I think you and I have talked about it a little in that, it might have been in that Future Lanterns pregame show, that you had the fact that you had so many people that once you got to episode 5, which was clearly, I think, the best. 5 and 6 were both good, but 5 was probably what most people would agree was the best episode of the season, with the return of the Mandalorian. When it really was Mandalorian season 2.5, episode 1, that so many people wanted to apologize and say, well, there's plenty of shows that, not every single episode is about the main character. Or, sometimes there's plenty of shows in which the main character is not even in every episode. And it's like, well, yeah, except number one, it's not. Those are established shows. You don't do it in the first season. You don't do it in a show that only has 7 episodes total. And a lot of the times you're talking about that kind of thing happens on shows that have large episode runs, like at prime time. It's almost like standard fare when a show runs for a long period of time, that you might have 1 or 2 episodes in a 20 plus episode run for a season, in which the main character is really not in. He or she may be in the episode, but they pretty much just film those scenes and they just cut them in because it's part of the contract. They do that. Or something like Game of Thrones, where they have so many storylines going, or they did have so many storylines going, that you wouldn't expect to see Daenerys and Jon Snow and Tyrion and Jaime and all these characters in every episode, just because you have to cover all the stories.
Also, it matters who the character is. Like if this was a thing, like something I think the show actually would have benefited from is if, a few episodes after we introduced these mod kids, if there was just an episode where we follow a couple of them on a side adventure so that they can get fleshed out or something. And maybe Boba Fett and Fennec Shan are in the beginning and the end of it, but it's mostly like a mod kid adventure. So like that's the kind of thing that would benefit the whole of the season, because these are supporting characters who are entirely new to Star Wars that nobody knows anything about. We need a reason to care about them. Instead, what they did was they essentially made an episode of a completely different TV show and just made it about the cast of that other TV show. And like, part of me feels like weird complaining about it, because not only was episode 5 the best episode of the entire season, it was also a really good episode of The Mandalorian, but it's ultimately a detriment to the season overall because it's not even remotely the thing that the show is supposed to be.
And again, by comparison, as many people did point this out, and then by comparison, when you stop and you think about it, even if you are just caught up in the moment and realize how good this episode was, or it is and then was when you look back at it, it's like, well, it also it magnifies the weaknesses of the actual Boba Fett show to begin with. Sure, it also, on a positive note, it reinforces that Filoni and Favreau haven't exactly lost their touch because hey, they can still do The Mandalorian really well. It just seems like whatever the game plan was for Boba Fett or how it came to be, that it wasn't there's lots of rumors about why this ended up the way it did, whether there was, some Kathleen Kennedy influence, or whether there was a power struggle, or whether it was just jammed together without really having a whole lot of thought because they were having issues with Pascal and they didn't know when season 3 of The Mandalorian was going to start filming. Wherever the truth is, none of it part of it. The reality is that it just seems like the game plan that they came up with for this show. I mean, even from the very beginning, with probably about 75% of the first 4 episodes were all flashback. And then you finally get to the point at the end of episode 4 where the little Bacta tank as the framing device for why and how we're getting all these flashbacks. They make it clear that, hey, he's fully healed now from everything that happened with the Sarlacc pit. So they make it clear that, hey, from going forward, the implication clearly is going forward, we're not going to be getting all these flashbacks. And then what happens? And Boba Fett completely disappears pretty much for 2 straight episodes.
God, the flashback, I feel like I can be ultra forgiving of a story until we get to basically the end, because I have confidence that a professional writer, or hell, in this case, a team of professional writers, will be smarter than me and be able to think of something I cannot think of. So maybe in the end, something will happen to tie it all together and make it make sense and kind of elevate the quality of the narrative as a whole. So I can look back and say, like, oh, that thing that didn't work for me at the time in the moment, looking back on it, it's pretty good. It's not the best, but I see what they did there and it's okay. This has been the exact opposite experience for me, where like the more time passes and the more I think about it, the less it makes any sense. Because like, I think I first brought this up comparing it to the current Jeffrey Thorne run of Green Lantern, where it's like, hey, it's every chapter is split in half between 2 different locations and time periods, and what's going on. Isn't that kind of a weird equivalence? Except it's actually not really that equivalent, because at least in the Green Lantern example, you split it because you're following the adventures of 2 separate casts of characters at the same time in different locations. This is all about Boba Fett in the past and present, and the existence of the flashback isn't serving the narrative at all. Like what we're seeing in the flashback portion of an episode doesn't really inform what's happening in the present day portion of the episode. By the end of it, by the time we were done with the flashbacks, I still cannot think of a single reason why this couldn't have just been told chronologically. Like, the first scene of this show is him crawling out of the Sarlacc's stomach, and then we just kind of go from there and then start flashing back and forth. Why couldn't we have taken like 2 episodes? I think there was about 2 episodes worth of past stuff. Just do all of it together and just flow into the present day stuff, because we're watching it all like as it's happening. And if you want to put in flashbacks, like you could actually later on, when they introduced Cad Bane, who is a character I was legitimately happy to see because I watched the Clone Wars and Rebels and I like that guy. This show, like, there's like 1 or 2 throwaway lines of dialogue that imply this past that he has with Boba Fett, how like maybe he trained Boba Fett or they're rivals or something. Like, I don't understand the relationship between those 2 characters, and I feel like I really need to. And I guess the show just assumes that I have read or watched all sorts of supplemental material first. But like, if you're married to this idea of let's jam some flashbacks into our Boba Fett story, show me pieces of their history together. Show me what they mean to each other. Show me where does this why does this conflict between them matter? And especially I still can't get over this. We saw you have a professional bounty hunter / assassin coming after Boba Fett who has some sort of deep history with Boba Fett, and you also have him working with the secret real killers of Boba Fett's adoptive family, and yet somehow that revelation didn't matter to Boba Fett really, and also they didn't hire Cad Bane to be the one to kill the family either, which would have made sense. I don't know. It feels like there's all sorts of obvious moves on the table, and not bad obvious, not lazy obvious, just basic storytelling obvious. And I don't understand why they didn't do any of them.
There's lots of things that I'm not just talking about, plot points that make you shake your head, because there's, Lord knows, there's lots of those in this series. But just a basic one. I mean, they try to build a case of why his experience with the Tuskens changed his worldview on everything. But it still doesn't entirely jibe with the idea that, that makes him want to be a crime boss now, but kind of doing more in the Don Corleone method of ruling with respect and having people want to help you and be loyal to you out of respect than out of fear. And then you get to the last episode, which covers the plot point issue too. It's instead of going back to the palace to try to, to where you literally have an armed fortress to help your cause when you're completely outgunned. Let's stay in town and fight because, I'm not going to abandon these people, my people. How are they your people all of a sudden? And it's not like the Pikes were trying to kill those people. They didn't give a shit about the people. They were trying to get you. So if you left, they would have gone after you. It's, in a way, they were setting this up, which would have been much better. They seemingly, and I thought this is where they were going with this, that they were trying to set up this because it would tie into the history of Star Wars in many levels, that they were trying to do this version of the Magnificent Seven, of Seven Samurai, that you thought he was going to be putting together this all-star group of Star Wars characters because especially when, Fennec talks and brings up for discussion about having the money to go to hire people, and they pretty much, the only person that they end up throwing money at is Mando, who doesn't even take the money. But you would think that you thought that was going to be one of many, that there's so many other characters, not just other bounty hunters that Boba Fett obviously has ties to, but other characters and/or bounty hunters / mercenaries throughout the Star Wars universe, included some of the expanded universe stuff and characters that were in canon. Now they've been brought back in Disney canon. There's lots of characters that could have brought in and introduced in a live action version for the first time. And we didn't even get that. Regarding Cad Bane, if I remember correctly, based on what I think I know about the background, I think Django trained Cad Bane. And I think there was some kind of reciprocation where Cad Bane and Boba Fett had kind of a mentor-student relationship when he was younger. So I think there's kind of that full circle that, Django trained Cad and Cad helped train Boba, and then there's the rivalry there. But I don't know. It just didn't really seem to pay off a lot of this. And it didn't help that Boba Fett just came across looking stupid a lot. He made horrible decisions. Almost all the good decisions that happened in this show were made by people he was with. Fennec was a lot brighter than he was. She had a lot. And I understand it's easier for her because she hasn't really turned over a new leaf, and he's trying to, so he may be more conflicted. But still, from the decision making across the board in the last episode, when he runs to go get, we all knew he was going to get the Rancor because they had foreshadowed him riding the Rancor into battle for a while now, since the Rancor pretty much was introduced. But on many levels, it would have made more sense to go get Slave One and have the air superiority to take out those giant destroyer droids. There's just, I don't know, there's a whole lot of stuff. And I think regarding what you said about Cad Bane and that, yes, it would have been real easy to find out that the Pikes had hired Cad Bane to take out the Tuskens and to frame, the gang or whatever, but it was Cad Bane. But they probably just didn't want to go that route because they know Cad Bane is relatively popular and he's kind of like this, he's a little ambiguous as far as whether he's completely evil or, good, evil in between, kind of like Boba Fett was arguably too, that if you're a mercenary, you can make a case you're somewhere in between in a mercenary / bounty hunter, that you have questionable morals, but you are not far, so far beyond being redeemed. And I think they like Cad Bane. I'm sure this isn't the last we're going to see of Cad Bane in live action. Who knows? We may see Cad Bane in live action in the Obi-Wan show. But the reality is that might be why they made that decision not to make him directly responsible, where I think a lot of people probably figured that's what's going to be the reveal in episode 7.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I think we're definitely, even though Cad Bane seemingly dies in this, I think that, he lived from the Clone Wars up through to after the original trilogy. So there's plenty of years of untold stories where they can just kind of slot him in there. So I'm not worried about not having enough Cad Bane content in the future. But I don't know. I wish there was so much ill-defined about this story. And just the fact that the present day parts of this are kind of bookended by a pair of comments that I don't think are they kind of come to nothing and aren't true. When he recruits Fennec Shan to join him, is basically comes down to him talking about how people in our line of work are always getting killed because idiots are calling the shots for us. Well, now we're gonna be our own boss. And then at the end, Cad Bane's well, you tried to go straight and it didn't work out. At least you gave it a shot. And I'm like, is that what he did? I don't know what he did. He showed up, he moved into Jabba's house, and then he just sort of walked. He made the rounds through town a bunch of times, and I don't know. Then people just started shooting at him after a while. What was he actually supposed to be doing? Okay, I understand. He is supposed to be the replacement for Jabba, and I have a very incredibly vague notion that means he is some kind of crime boss. They keep calling him a daimyo. I don't know what that word means. But all I know is supposedly the heads of organizations are supposed to pay him tribute for protection money, maybe. I don't know. I don't understand. I don't if you're going to have a plot about him trying to build a new and better life for him and Fennec and people like them, then you have to show us what is the mechanics of how that works. What is the business he is running? What is the thing he is offering? I assume, well, actually no, because later I was gonna say I assume it's not the drug trade because that's what he's trying to get out of there. But Fennec says the drug, moving spice makes up a good chunk of the business. So does that mean that since he took over, he has been helping to facilitate the drug trade on that planet, or not? Or has he been trying to replace it with something else? What are these jobs that he promises the mods that he is going to create when their big complaint is man, water's too expensive and there's no work to be had? I said it jokingly once. I don't remember it was on mic before, but Boba Fett, when he first becomes a new daimyo, he and Fennec just sort of they walk from Jabba's palace into town. They walk through Main Street. They check in on that cantina. Then they walk to the mayor's office, talk to the mayor. Then they walk home. And then he realizes there's something he forgot to do. They walk into town again and they just do the loop a couple times. What the hell was Boba Fett supposedly doing?
Getting in those miles on his Fitbit, I guess. Yeah, this just, I mean, if they had spent more time dealing with the present stuff and not the flashbacks, and I think you could have actually had all the stuff fleshed out reasonably well, and then you would at least understand what their game plan was. Like you mentioned, it's the idea of turning over a new leaf stemming from the idea that we're kind of always working for idiots and getting put in bad situations. So then Boba Fett graduates to being head idiot and taking over the role of being an idiot, making horrible decisions. And you really feel bad for the two Gamorrean guards who really got shafted.
Oh my God.
They got the only two members of his posse that get wiped out in the final episode. Spoiler alert, are the two Gamorreans who were ridiculously loyal considering they were not getting a whole lot in return out of this deal.
I don't know if anyone else on the main cast even knows they died. Because like like we see them pick up a comm to call for help or whatever. Nobody ever answers. Nobody ever seems to acknowledge like, hey, where did the Gamorrean pig guards go? And at the end, when like everybody's like the battle's all over, everybody's like standing around chuckling about fruit. Nobody's sad. Like nobody even notices that these guys are gone.
Yeah, talk about cannon fodder.
God, wait, I mean, if you want a cannon fodder, there's like 6 or 7 of these mod kids, and the show cares about 2 of them. So why aren't we picking off a few?
Actually, did one die? We know one got shot at least. I'm trying to remember if one actually died.
Oh man, I hope so. That would be great.
when they got ambushed or whatever.
The show cares about the girl and the guy with the thing on his eye.
Yeah, with the useless spin move that didn't need to happen.
God, I can't like that did look dumb. I am amazed that the internet has latched onto it the way it has.
Yeah, it is funny, but this is one of those appropriate things. It's like, yeah, that was sometimes it can be bad enough when Jedi do a lot of spinning, but at least with the Force and the speed and everything, you can kind of get, and you can suspend your disbelief a little bit more. And based on the way they shot that scene, even it looked like, yeah, that's a good way to get shot in the back and waste time in the process. But and as people pointed out, it's like, okay, you're outgunned so tremendously in this whole conflict. I mean, you have no army. Even that whole Freetown stuff is ridiculous. There's still only a handful of people. And you think the Pikes alone, besides their own troops, that they could bring in so many mercenaries if there was a literal war, that there'd be no way you could win. But you only have like 5 or 6 people really that you can trust. So let's have them all stand out in the open. Every single one of them. You're outgunned. You should be high. You should be on rooftops. You should be lurking behind this. You should not be out in the open when you literally only have 6 people and people are coming to get you.
Well, it's funny that you say that because like there were like 2 or 3 times where everybody was clustered together on the street and they were in a no-win scenario, and then they got one single person to a slightly elevated position and immediately won the fight. Like when the mods were first getting like cornered by all the townspeople, they were pulling guns out of barrels and stuff. And hey, here's Fennec. She's like on top of a roof and she saved you. And then like later when all like the Freetown cavalry is hiding in that behind that wall, oh, we got one person with a rifle on the roof and it fixed the situation. And like one of the coolest moments in the entire show when, you know, the bombed out cantina is surrounded. Let's have Boba Fett and Mando come in from either side of the street on their jetpacks, firing at the crowd of enemies. It was awesome.
Or even at the end when Cad Bane's fire freaks out, the Rancor, which I assume I'm assuming Rancors are just naturally prone to being afraid of fire. But either way, but once the Rancor starts going crazy, everybody is like, oh, we got to kill the Rancor. Why don't you just get out of the town? I mean, or wait till Boba comes and deals with the Rancor. Like, I don't think he's going to be too thrilled that you're trying to kill his Rancor. It's like, it's not really the Rancor's fault that he's freaking out. But even in this episode, at the end of the day, I mean, all the real cool stuff, although visually, yes, Boba Fett riding the Rancor was cool. But realistically speaking, almost all the relevant stuff still had to do with, it was all Mandalorian stuff.
Yeah, all the Mandalorian stuff ended up being the emotional core of the whole thing because I'm already invested in those characters. I'm not invested in any of the Boba Fett characters.
And it's a waste because I've said this before. I've never been a Boba Fett guy. I've never understood why people like Boba Fett. He's the Captain Phasma of the original trilogy. Looks cool. Barely does anything at all. Yeah, I mean, he did more than Captain Phasma did, but he really his best move was figuring out that Han Solo was going to be waiting to float away in garbage. But the reality is, he never did anything to deserve the reputation that he got out of the original trilogy. But Mandalorian season 2 actually made Boba Fett cool. And it made me interested, at least when they had that, post-credit scene making it clear that he was going to be getting his own show. It's like, okay, I'm not going to say I'm pumped for it, but I'll definitely be there to watch it because now I'm intrigued about what they're going to do with this. And I like Tamora Morrison. I like Jango Fett. I still think it's cool that, you go back and look at the whole history of Star Wars and realizing that, basically Boba Fett's genetic template was the entire clone army used by the Republic. And it all goes back to Jango Fett, this one badass who basically was who supplied the genetic material to make the entire army of the Republic, which was damn good. I think all of that was interesting. So you have a lot of goodwill. Fennec is cool. They had a good and important role in Mandalorian season 2. So all this goodwill, all this interest, and then almost right off the bat, it's kind of like gets flushed down the toilet because it's just a relatively slow-moving Boba Fett, who was a badass in season 2 of The Mandalorian, who was hardly a badass here. I mean, the most badass thing he pretty much. I mean, yeah, he did technically disintegrate somebody in episode 1 or 2 when they're fighting on the street and he gets ambushed. But the reality is, other than his showdown with Cad Bane, in which he still is getting his ass kicked horribly for 99% of the fight, he really doesn't do much. It's more like it was the Book of Fennec Shand, and that would have been a hell of a lot more interesting than what we're doing.
I wish it was the Book of Fennec Shand. I mean, my God, she gets the revenge kill against the Pike Syndicate boss that had his family killed. Like, come on. But that's the most badass thing Boba Fett did in the entire series was sit on top of the Rancor and just say, do it. And then the Rancor gives a Mortal Kombat fatality to this giant battle droid.
I know, and the Rancor takes a lot of damage too. He took a lot of damage. That's like, well, you should have factored that in. But you're correct. And like you mentioned, the emotional weight all comes from the Mandalorian characters. Of course it does. I mean, episode 5 was so heavily invested in but Din Djarin's his story and the fact that he obviously misses Grogu so much. And then you get episode 6, which is awesome, where you get to see an even better CGI'd version of Luke and Grogu. Ahsoka was shoehorned in. I didn't mind it, but because that's again building the Filoni Favreau verse, that's going to pay dividends down the road, probably because we will see Luke and Ahsoka probably doing stuff together in an adventure. Maybe they're tying all this in to do stuff with her show with Grand Admiral Thrawn. But the reality is that episode had a lot of weight. It was kind of douchey, but typical of Luke to kind of make Grogu choose one or the other.
That drove me crazy. I'm like, you, Luke Skywalker, I'm everybody's best friend, emotionally attached to everything Skywalker. There is a trilogy of 3 movies where everything Luke does in them is based on the fact that he is emotionally invested in everyone he has ever met. And now he's going to sit there and tell this baby, like, hey, look, you shouldn't be emotionally attached to people. I'm like, come on, man. What is this?
Yeah, it's at the very least it's hypocritical because it's Luke's. Well, it's a little more understandable for Luke being attached to his father from the perspective that he thought of his father in a different light, even before he knew he was before the version of the truth that Obi-Wan was kind of forced to tell him by Yoda. But even he just had this almost like this X factor, this idol worship, or this gap that was filled by missing. He had this void from not having his father in his life. So he would, or in his mind's eye, what his father was. So I can understand why once he realized Vader was his father. Besides, of course, obviously being Force sensitive to know that supposedly that Vader had this good stuff that still was buried deep down. that made more sense to me, him being attached to Luke to Vader than Vader being attached to Luke, when Vader was an idiot and didn't even know there was a Luke until the Emperor told him. I think, yes, that's been retconned 1,000 times in different versions of comic books and things that he found it. But either way, that Luke, of all people, it was his attachment to Darth Vader and his unwillingness to just write him off and just say, yeah, I'll kill him if I have to. That basically is what led to the downfall of the Empire and the ultimate, return of the Republic, by his having faith in his father to do the right thing at the end and then basically fulfill that prophecy. So for him to do that, to grow, and I was kind of, part of me was surprised we got that revelation in so early on in episode 7. I thought they might have dragged that out. Just like I thought there was a chance Grogu would have first have chosen the lightsaber, and then that would be something that would play out in Mandalorian season 3, that maybe the paths would cross between Luke and Grogu and or Mandalorian again, and that would be where eventually Grogu and Luke would maybe realize that he really belongs. He really belongs with the Mandalorian. The part that was also cool in this, of course, and I'm sure that's going to pay off soon, is when Luke starts. Obviously, he starts helping Grogu get his memories back, which also factors into probably why Grogu is getting better at using the Force and can do more without fading out and taking a nap every 3 seconds. So not quite obviously out of that phase yet, but at least which is kind of was heartbreaking seeing the Order 66 from little really tiny baby Grogu's perspective, and then still opening the door for us finding out who actually saves him, which of course is one of those great mysteries that remains to be seen. I mean, we can eliminate a lot of people who could have saved him because they weren't on Coruscant during the Order, but it does raise that question, because you assume it's got to be somebody relevant, even if it's not going to be, hey, Mace Windu didn't die. It's got to be somebody of relevance, you would think, since they're building that up so heavily, and since they tied Grogu into Order 66, that it's got to be somebody who was on Coruscant at the time that we didn't actually see die anywhere else.
I mean, it's a surefire way to get another Clone Wars era character into live action, which True. I'm fine with. I liked Clone Wars. It's been enough years since I watched it that I would really hope that the new show explains the context to me, because again, that's a lot of TV. Not everybody's gonna know. Like I agree. Like the Luke making Grogu choose, like I do not agree with it as a character point for Luke, but I recognize it is a utilitarian thing that they needed to do because it solves 2 problems for them really easily. The first being it separates Grogu from Luke, so we don't have to wonder, did Grogu die when all of Luke's students got massacred? And second, the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda doing the lone wolf and cub thing was a universally beloved license to print money, and they would be stupid to not try and get back to that as quickly as possible. So right like that, right there, you got your reset. You got your avoiding the uncomfortable possible baby murder of this adorable little Yoda, and we're good to go for Mando season 3.
Yes, at some point they were going to have to obviously send Grogu on his way, because of the fact that, especially since this show, what originally the first season of Mandalorian was 5 years after Return of the Jedi, that soon you were going to be getting into the time frame where, yes, Ben was going to end up with Luke.
Well, what if Ben turned him? What if Grogu was a Knight of Ren, a little bitty Knight of Ren? Oh, I want it.
Now, technically, they did do a comic book series on the rise of Kylo Ren, which makes it clear that even after he turns to the dark side and wipes out a lot of the students at the temple, not every student of Luke was at the temple at the time, but so they went. I think they went after Kylo Ren when he was still. At that point, he was a member of the Knights of Ren, but he wasn't the leader. And eventually, all the final students did get wiped out. But even according to that comic book, which is canon, until they put something on the screen, I think that contradicts it. That not every single one of Luke's students was at the temple when Kylo went off. But yeah, we know there wasn't anybody who looked like Yoda, so they were going to have. Plus, it opens the door because of how old that species lives to. I mean, hey, if they do that sequel trilogy with Rey, we don't know that Grogu isn't alive somewhere.
Yeah, true.
He's just not a Jedi. He just never became a true Jedi. He never got. But then again, technically, Ahsoka's not really a Jedi either, because she was still only an apprentice when she left the Order. So
now, you have said numerous times that you like episode 6 of this show.
Yes.
We differ.
Oh, you didn't like episode 6? Go ahead, go for it.
I understand why you would like it. Like the idea of like here is a young Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker doing, like, basically acting out a period of Star Wars that has only ever been able to be imagined before. Like, I'm sure there were books and comic books that did this before. I don't know. I never read them. But like the idea of taking like one of the most classic and iconic Star Wars characters that is a real person and being able to continue their story past that original trilogy and just like see something happen that you never thought you would be able to see happen. It's like, if you are a huge Star Wars person and you grew up loving Star Wars, this is probably like a fantastic experience. I don't have that really. Like, I was a kid in the early 80s. I grew up watching, I think my dad taped the original trilogy on VHS when it was on TV. Like, so I saw like a TV cut with commercials of all three of those movies like 100 times each when I was a kid. But I never really latched on to the characters. Like, lightsabers were cool and Darth Vader was scary. That was kind of like, that's the most I ever took from Star Wars. So like, for me, like, there's no real like awe and wonder of like, we get more Luke Skywalker in his prime. And it's this weird experience, because like, the thing that I've been enjoying so much about shows like The Mandalorian is its departure from the classics. It's the fact that we're going to make up a new character, put him in the Star Wars universe, and send him to different places we haven't necessarily seen before. A few places we have, but we're just going to follow this guy on his random adventures. And that's the same kind of thing that drew me to shows like the Clone Wars and to Rebels. Like, yeah, there are original trilogy characters in there, but the characters that I associate the most strongly with those series are, your Cad Banes and your Ahsokas, because they are the wholly original characters that were inserted into Star Wars to go off in their own directions. And to see this, like it's not the first time we've seen this, like this CG rendition of classic characters. They did Tarkin first in Rogue One. Was it Rogue One or Solo? I forget, but it was one of those movies.
Rogue One.
Yeah, and like there, it was kind of weird, but I didn't really give it much thought, because it's like, whatever. It was on screen for like 5 minutes. Who cares? With this, like, we all of a sudden get this like 15-minute scene of like this deep fake Luke Skywalker interacting with other characters, and like it just hit me like, oh, they're gonna keep doing this. We're going to be seeing this Luke Skywalker a lot, and it's probably, there's no chance it's gonna stop with him. Like, we're gonna have that, like, every original series character they want to keep using, they're gonna keep using like this. And it's like, it feels like a weird thing to complain about with Star Wars of all things, but it's like it's like they're trying to have it both ways. They're trying to forge ahead in new different directions with a new cast of characters, while also holding on to the old ones for dear life and never letting go. And it's really, really strange and off-putting to me.
I can understand that, because you have a different, age-wise, you have a different relationship with Star Wars than, let's say, I would, and people closer to me in age. And I think that does I think that does factor in. And maybe people who, again, grew up with the prequels might have a different view, because it's hard to know for sure. Star Wars is so multi-generational, especially because even if you if you grew up in say the 90s, then you were raised by people who had seen Star Wars, and the odds are Star Wars was important to them. So you would have seen those movies before you even got to the prequels, that you would have already had seen the original movies and things like that. I get where you're coming from. The thing that is good about it, it can be misused. There's no doubt. It gives you the opportunity to erase some of the sins that, like the cardinal sins that the sequel trilogy gave us, as bad as a lot of it, certainly from a moving the story forward perspective, because it didn't, that The Last Jedi, as many of the issues The Last Jedi had, that arguably the biggest cardinal sin in the entire sequel trilogy was an Abrams movie, whether it was his call or whether that was, again, a Kennedy thing. But the decision not to give us one scene, even if it was a friggin' flashback, of Han, Luke, and Leia together, has to rank up there as one of the stupidest decisions ever made in one of these things. It's like, what do people want to see if you're doing a Star Wars sequel trilogy when you're bringing back the original actors? You want to see all of them together at least once. And you can't even say, maybe if Abrams had his way, you would have gotten that in a flashback if he had done all three movies. But either way, that was such a horrible decision. It's like, oh yeah, we'll take Luke off the table completely, and yeah, we'll have. It was like when after Han dies and when they get back to the base and they have stupid Rey and Leia hugging, which means absolutely nothing. It should have been Chewie and Leia. And of course, Chewie was even in the background, and that's why eventually Abrams said, well, I at least should have shot that scene differently, because it stands out like a sore thumb that Chewie and Leia should have been the one bonding over that. The stuff like this on the TV shows can erase some of those sins, because you still have the opportunity potentially to have a Han and Luke scene where it's still, at least, even if it's not, depending, no matter how deep fake they do it, whether it's, they just do a pure de-aging, or, it's just pure CGI for the face of Mark Hamill and he does the voice, but it's a different act. Either way, you still have a shot to get a Han and Luke scene together. You still have a shot probably to have a scene of all three of them together in some story.
Yeah, that's where it's gonna get really, really weird, because I think there's a big difference between okay, there's no way Mark Hamill could actually play this role, and we don't want to recast him, so let's make a CG as realistic as humanly possible CG character of him. Sooner or later, probably sooner, we are going to get a Princess Leia in this style, and that's when it's going to start feeling extra weird, because it's like, oh man, we're just bringing back beloved dead actors now, aren't we? I mean, we already did. We started with Tarkin, but I don't know. I guess I keep forgetting him because I, again, don't have that attachment.
And I thought, honestly, Tarkin, worked fine in Rogue One. I mean, I think he looked okay. I thought he looked better than the Princess Leia cameo at the end of that movie. And I think everything they did with Tarkin in that movie, and based on the time frame, it fits. Since obviously this is literally right before the beginning of Star Wars, of Episode 4.
I wonder if it was because they tried it both ways. Because in Rogue One, they CG'd Tarkin, but in Solo they recast Han. So did they just did they use each of those as a test case to see which worked better, which should audiences like better, and so less people liked Solo than liked Rogue One, so they took that?
I think at the end of the day, it's just they knew if Solo had worked, and Solo as a movie was okay, considering.
Yeah, it was good.
And when you consider everything Ron Howard had to do to clean up the mess that he inherited, that movie it was a perfect storm of crap that it took, because people were upset over The Last Jedi. And nobody had really wanted a Han Solo movie without Harrison Ford. So it was just a perfect combination of, this is the movie where people were going to say, hey, it's almost like they were going to make a statement and say, we're not going to go support this movie for all these reasons. As a movie, it was fine. I enjoyed it. I would have been more than happy to see a sequel. It kind of really sucked that they set up the Darth Maul thing with Kira, and we may never. we still may see that on screen, even if it's on somehow in a TV show or something. I mean, because obviously Kira, based on comic books, is still alive during the time frame of even now, even in the post Return of the Jedi world. That's why a lot of people thought Kira, now that she's running Crimson Dawn, that she was going to be one of the cameos. Amelia Clark was going to be one of the cameos on the show that never happened. But I think they just knew there was no way they were going to get Harrison Ford. Even if they get the CGI technology back then was as good as it is now, they just knew that he was never going to be willing to come back and do Han Solo again for full movies. So I think
it's amazing that they got him back to do Force Awakens.
Well, I think Force Awakens, even though we'll have to see how this turns out, but Force Awakens, I'm pretty sure the trade-off was he wanted to do another Indiana Jones movie, and that was the trade-off. I think that was the deal. So they said, hey, you come do this for us, and we'll give you one last Indiana Jones movie. I think it's a bigger surprise in a positive way that they got him to come back for The Rise of Skywalker. That was a bigger coup, having him come back to do that pseudo vision, not flashback, but that memory, that memory of Kylo Ren's. So I think that was a bigger coup. I mean, so.
Yeah, I mean, like if they want to sell me on the weird CG people technology, fix that movie, make a different version of that movie.
Of which one, Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think they will never do it, certainly as long as Kathleen Kennedy is running Lucasfilm. But there were plenty of rumors about them trying to like almost wipe that out of continuity, which in Star Wars, there is a way to do that, which is how, obviously, if you watch the Clone Wars and Rebels and Ahsoka still being alive, that there's ways to play around with time, that they could do things.
Oh God, yeah.
They could do things to if they wanted to erase those, to change that. But we know that's never going to happen while Kathleen Kennedy's in charge. But hopefully this is her last tour of duty. And
I mean, we're talking about Rebels. There's literal ways to play with time.
Right. So, but
I don't know. I mean, I think that the sequel trilogy, which I really enjoyed the first 2/3 of, it has the exact same problem as Book of Boba Fett probably does. That they started out with a strong enough concept, but didn't appear to have much of a plan along the way, and just kind of did whatever, and it didn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, and you get conflicting stories. I do think because as a writer, it would be impossible not to have an idea where things were going to go, even if you weren't planning on continuing it. So I do believe that Abrams probably had, at the very least, he had treatments, or he had major plot points of where the breadcrumbs he laid were going to go. It's just that Rian Johnson didn't care about it, and Kathleen Kennedy didn't care that Rian Johnson didn't care, or approved that he didn't care, because all the dangling mysteries and plot points and all these paths through the wilderness that J.J. Abrams set up, Rian Johnson just closed. And while I do think Rise of Skywalker could have been better, and again, depending on what you hear, not all of the reasons why it was bad was all Abrams. Because Kathleen Kennedy supposedly has final cut over every Star Wars movie. So she had, even if it came down to a battle between Abrams and Kennedy, based on Kennedy would overrule him. But Abrams was pushed up against the wall anyway, because he wasn't supposed to be doing that third movie. It was supposed to be Colin Trevorrow. And it's the fact that basically he had to do episode 8 and episode 9 in one movie, because episode 8 did nothing to move the plot forward. Literally, it took place like a day or less than a day after the last movie, which is ridiculous. It's a reason why there's always a time jump in Star Wars movies, because you have to have characters in different places and establish new situations and show growth. And there were so many reasons why that was a poor decision, but it boxed them into what they were going to do in episode 9. I don't know. As we're getting close to an hour, Dan, I should point this out, and you mocked me, that the reality is Star Wars is a mixed bag. It really is. There's good and bad. I mean, there's been a lot of good stuff on Disney Plus since that, the finishing up the Clone Wars. Again, it finished up really strong. I do agree. I didn't care about the Bad Batch stuff to start with, and the middle arc was you were correct that it was to show what, how tough life was for people, and especially if you're not on the upper echelon of the food chain. But it also was to bring Ahsoka back and give her some background before, building to the big crescendo. But in Bad Batch, I also agree. If that series is a lot for a show, for characters I had no real interest in, that show I really enjoyed season 1 of the Bad Batch. But for the most part, their TV shows have worked. That's what makes the Book of Boba Fett, and maybe it's appropriate to swing back around to this as we get close to the end, that the Book of Boba Fett's the one right now, from a TV show perspective, that stands out. Even what was the animated show? The one with all the Vision, was it Visions?
Oh yeah, the anime anthology.
Yeah, the Visions, Star Wars Visionaries, Visions. Whatever it was.
I think it was just Visions.
Yeah, even that I liked. I mean, I didn't love every single episode, but I thought for what it was, that was fine.
Yeah.
Considering, again, I'm not an anime person, but I thought that worked. So to me, right now, Book of Boba Fett is the one that, at the very least, if it was like if you were like scoring a fight, I probably would have scored this like a 3-3-1. It would be a draw. There probably were 3 episodes I liked, 3 episodes I didn't, and probably 1 episode I was like, okay, it's right, it's dead right in the middle.
I can't even really divide it. Like I will tell you flat out, episode 5, the episode that was just The Mandalorian, I loved it. That was a great episode. Every other episode of the show was like mediocre with the occasional great moment, and it's a shame because like again, like I'm with you, like I never understood why everybody loved Boba Fett so much. And I was kind of excited to see this show because I'm like, okay, well, if they're going to do a Boba Fett show and they can make it as good as they made The Mandalorian, then maybe I'll finally get what the big deal is. I will see why people like Boba Fett, and maybe I'll like Boba Fett. And then they just they didn't do it. The show didn't really seem to have all that much to say or want to do with Boba Fett. Like, I don't know.
It didn't seem to have, ultimately, other than having connective tissue for the Favreau-Filoni verse and set in opening doors that they're going to walk through later on. It didn't seem to have a real purpose for being. And I think that's what bothers a lot of people. I think
I agree, but like I don't know if we'll ever know this, but I would love to find out what happened behind the scenes with this show, because we've seen I look at season 2 of The Mandalorian was filled with episodes that were like basically teasers for future Disney Plus ventures, Right. It's like, oh, here's this Clone Wars character where they're going to go off and have their thing. Oh, here's Ahsoka. We're setting up the Ahsoka show. And there was like a couple more, I don't remember. But even in those cases, they still wove them into the natural story arc of The Mandalorian season 2 and made those episodes like legitimately like enjoyable and compelling. And they were happening kind of weaving in and out throughout the season. Book of Boba Fett, they didn't do any of it at all. And then abruptly, as soon as we get 4 episodes in, they just start doing it intensely straight on till to the end. And like that kind of thing like makes it feel like they didn't like it makes it feel like they had a different plan but had to change something after they already started airing episodes. And like I don't know if that there was just a problem with Tamora Morrison. I don't know if there was some sort of like, oh, this isn't going to be ready in time, so we have to shuffle things, or like, I don't know what happened, but it like this to me, like I get such a strong feeling of a troubled production from this show.
And that may very well be true. I mean, again, there were rumors, and I don't know if there's any truth in it, but there were rumors that they were doing heavy editing on the final episode of the show, almost, down to the wire. Just like that's where a lot of the rumors. I mean, because the Han Solo cameo had been rumored for a long time, so it could just be garbage. But considering that had been, I think that had been as attached to this show as the Quicksilver, though it turned out to be fake Quicksilver, and in WandaVision had been, as long as Evan Peters had been attached to that show. That's as long as the the Han Solo cameo had been in the final episode had been attached to this show. And depending on what you hear, that was one of the last things they decided to cut out. Now, I don't know if it was Han showing up with Ben to meet Luke. That probably would have been made the most sense, even though it has nothing to do with the Book of Boba Fett. But then again, that obviously wasn't a criteria for the show. But it would be, from a timing perspective, it would work now that Grogu was gone. And since Ben is supposed to technically, I think, in canon, really be Luke's first real student, but either way, it's like there may very well have been, or a lack of a plan about this, or the plan changed once whatever issues were going on with Mandalorian were resolved, and they knew Mandalorian season 3 was going to progress fine. That they just didn't. This seems to be filler, and that's how it feels. It feels like filler and opening up plot points that they're going to pick up in other shows, and just to have an excuse that, hey, if we, it's like if you need help, or next time we go to Tatooine, which obviously Mandalorian has tons of ties to Tatooine, it's like, oh, now we can bring Boba Fett back in, and Fennec, or if Mandalorian needs something, and then now Boba Fett once again might feel indebted to him and go back and forth. And
I hope they shelve Boba Fett for a little while. Like this show is going to leave a bad taste in people's mouths. I think we need to take the break of Boba Fett for a little bit before we use him again. Like, put some distance, let some wounds heal. We have to push our fandoms into our own back to tanks and recover from this show. And I hope it doesn't take too long, because like the instant the finale of this show aired, they released the poster for the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, and it's him at a distance walking in the desert, and everybody I see is like, they're like zooming in and they're talking about how excited they are, and like, oh, look, his robes are different from this movie, but they look like that movie, and oh, let's examine the lightsaber hilt he's carrying. And I'm just looking at this thing and I'm like, I never want to see this desert ever again.
I know it is unfortunate in a way by choosing to do this movie. I mean, this show on Tatooine, I don't think people are going to hold, in general, people are not going to hold it against the Obi-Wan show, because people are much more interested in the Obi-Wan show. And there's a logical reason why, even if he's not on Tatooine the entire time, why he's on Tatooine. We know he has to, by virtue of mythology, and he has to stay on Tatooine because his role is to protect Luke.
Oh, I know, but we just had like the best thing about the Book of Boba Fett, leaving Boba Fett behind, was that we started following characters that could get into a spaceship and go somewhere else. Like I guess, again, he just kind of walks around the block over and over again, nonstop. Like using Tatooine as a location in The Mandalorian was fine, because The Mandalorian spent like maybe 2 full episodes on that planet and just went to other places, or went to space or whatever. And I don't know, it's a pretty boring location to set 2 entire TV series there.
The ultimate irony will be, even though again I guess you would have to do this kind of proving your point, to make it a compelling story, they almost are going to, and based on what we hear, it makes sense that this happens. But there would be more than a little irony to the one show you would think conceptually would have to stay married to Tatooine would be Obi-Wan, because he couldn't leave, is the one show that maybe that's not going to happen, and Obi-Wan is actually going to leave Tatooine for a short period of time. And the show that had no real ties, logically, why you couldn't leave Tatooine, was the show that the main character just didn't leave.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, like, I am putting all of my hopes on Ewan McGregor, because I'm like, okay, like he is like the best thing about the prequel trilogy. He is like perfect for this role. Him coming back is the thing that has me the most interested in watching it, and I have to believe that he will not tolerate being fucked with. So I'm hoping that he will save this show, because like, and I know it's not 1-to-1 or anything, but like, coming off of the experience of watching the Book of Boba Fett, and then immediately being shown like, hey, looking forward to our next Star Wars TV show. I'm like, I'm not really now. No, let's I'm gonna go watch Hawkeye again instead or something. I don't know.
I think at the end of the day, the good news is, assuming Obi-Wan show is good, and with Deborah Chow, I have confidence into that. I think it will help erase a little bit of the bad taste from Boba Fett.
Yeah.
And it gives you something to look forward to, just like Moon Knight gives you something to look forward to, even though Hawkeye was good, but it gives you something different, something to look forward to. Any closing thoughts?
Not really. I mean, I feel bad. Like, I don't like being one of those fans that just goes on the internet and complains. And I feel like I've done nothing but that with Book of Boba Fett. But like there are parts of it that I legitimately love. Sometimes it's little touches, like when Luke was walking with Grogu and Grogu couldn't keep up with Luke walking at a normal pace. He would every few seconds just swing his hand forward and kind of force lift Grogu ahead of him so that they could take a walk together. And that was a really nice little touch there. I like that. I like a lot about the final fight at the end. I loved episode 5 with Mando and everybody. You know, like the whole series is peppered with little things that I think are really cool, but they just didn't add up into enough to save this show. And I mean, you were right. Like, this is like the rare odd one out for Star Wars TV projects, especially in the modern day. But it's kind of the same with movies, right? Where like there are at least in my opinion, there are more good Star Wars movies than there are bad ones. But when a Star Wars movie is bad, it is really bad and it hits hard. And that's how it feels with a really bad Star Wars TV show. You know, they had like a pretty good run with their animated stuff. The final season of Clone Wars was a little mixed, but really good. I really enjoyed Rebels. I enjoyed the anime anthology way more than you did. And and I think we both genuinely love Mandalorians. But so like this one show isn't going to be that big a deal in the long run. It's just kind of a shame that it felt so deflating when they had been on like a pretty good streak.
I think that sums it up nicely. It's not like it's a death blow. It's not like it's a death knell or anything, or it causes a serious. You know what it is in a microcosm? It's essentially up to this point. It's what the Eternals was for Marvel. It's a bump in the road. It's not one of your greatest moments or success stories, and it didn't land the way you hoped it would. But then you follow it up with Spider-Man, and nobody cares anymore. So
Yeah.
So if Obi-Wan knocks it out of the park, which certainly everybody is hoping it does, then. And in Mandalorian season 3, when we get that later on, I assume at the end of the year, for better or for worse, Boba Fett's going to become a distant memory, and that's probably. And again, it wasn't horrible. It also wasn't great. It was disappointing. I think it was serviceable, but disappointing. Ultimately, that would be my quick few word review if I had to say.
Yeah, and despite all of it, I still am looking forward to the Ahsoka show. Oh, that is a character. Like, that's the thing. I guess take all of my Star Wars opinions with a grain of salt, because my take on these characters is basically like all those old characters, meh. But these new characters, now we're talking. Like, I'm the guy that like loved Force Awakens because for exactly the reasons people don't like it. They're like, oh, well, it's just the first movie, but with different characters in it. And I'm like, yeah, now we're talking.
No, I agree. There's a lot of things to be so optimistic about with Star Wars, and even this. It's not like this was, it's like, again, the Eternals analogy. The Eternals wasn't a train wreck, really. This isn't a train wreck either. It's just when you look at it compared to the best of what we've gotten so far from each respective universe, and brand, it's like, well, it's nothing to write home about. All right, Dan, push your stuff.
All right. Well, if you if you're done with this and you'd rather hear me talk about things I like, go to youtube.com/c/Mosaic Comics. I run a Green Lantern YouTube channel full of like issue reviews and analytical video essays about stuff from all over Green Lantern's 80 plus year history. We're up to like, is it 82 now? Almost 83? I forget. But yeah, we're like I talk about individual characters, Golden Age stuff, weird Silver Age stuff, break down like core concepts that about the characters and how their powers work that we just assume have been like fleshed out, but really don't make a lick of sense at all. And it's just a really good time. It's a way for me to kind of work through my feelings about what is, I think it's fair to say, is my favorite thing in all of fiction, and share that with other people. So if that sounds interesting to you, go to YouTube, search Mosaic Comics, and, enjoy Green Lantern along with me.
Nicely put. And if you're still here listening to the LanternCast after all these centuries, it's like in our future Lantern episode, it's like if the Green Lantern Corps still exists, in the 30th century or whatever. We know the LanternCast won't, but maybe there'll be somebody living in a cave with all these rings around. It's like we're gonna keep posting a review once every few weeks, years. Who are we kidding? But nonetheless, that rambling's over. LanternCast.com, LanternCast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, #GeoCast to track us down. Spotify and Stitcher, Apple Podcasts too. We're on all of those platforms, so please leave us a positive review on all or any of the platforms you do listen to us on. And last but not least, if you'd like to text us or leave us a voicemail, 708-LANTERN, 708-LANTERN, and let us know what you think. Not saying what next week's going to be. Who knows? All we know is one way or the other. Dan will be back soon because obviously Green Lantern 11 came out technically today as we were recording this. So if it's not next week, probably within the next week or so, Dan will be back to do our next issue review.
Yes.
Cool.
In the meantime, Mark's going to fill time by reviewing Legion back issues.
Oh, God, I hope not. There'll be a lot of skip weeks before that happens. Probably. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.